And it tells you how common your name was. And I did put Dawn in. It's never been that popular. Can't think why. And there were only 5 babies named Dawn in 2022.
Really? That's surprising.
It's not a full confession here, right? My middle name, Mum, I hate you, is Maureen. Why is everyone laughing? My middle name is Maureen, which is a good old-fashioned East End name, and that has completely died out. There were no babies named Maureen.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Names like Keith, for example, Peter. Would you call a baby these days Keith or Ian? Baby Ian?
Without a doubt. I feel like I'm in a persecuted minority, you see, because later on, when I'm watching the boxing with Terry, Steve, Mick, Phil and Kev, right, and Peter, there are no such names featuring in this list. We are dying out. Our names will soon be gone forever, and I feel victimised by it.
Likewise, I should think we should start a campaign group and go on a protest march through London.
Hans, what do you make about Mohammed being number 2 for boys' names?
You know, I'm not going to comment on people. You know, they're going to call what they want to call. What I find interesting is people that do double barrel because they can't decide, and you know, a lot of people do that, and that's a bit difficult because I think you should just pick a name. You know.
I tell you names that are falling down the list though: Harry and Meghan.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Friday the 24th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Akwe and Mark Dolan.
The night afraid to fight. That's how the Tories have described Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, who commits to only 2 TV debates rather than 6.
And then tumbling energy bills. A typical household's annual bill will fall by £122 in July, just when you don't really need the heat. Meanwhile, today, the Conservatives and Labour are set to clash on their energy policies. Would cheaper bills seal your vote?
And Farage's final throw of the dice. Nigel says he has one more big card to play in politics, but didn't have time to prepare for this summer election. What's going on?
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week.
And chaos in Mallorca at least 4 dead and others are trapped under the rubble after a restaurant building collapses. We'll bring you the latest. Yes, so we're going to be very busy, all this sort of electioneering. I mean, Keir Starmer, we've got Rishi Sunak and all the other parties as well. I mean...
Well, that's right. Britain loves an underdog. Does that help Sunak? Are Labour ready for power? So much to guess.
Is he the underdog, though? Who is the underdog? That's the question.
The electorate, I think.
I think we are. We're the losers. Well, as ever, we'd love to hear what you think. To send us your thoughts and views and comments, you can go to gbnews.com/your say. But here's the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning to you. It's 9:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. Energy policy and the cost of living looks set to become an electoral dividing line, with household bills falling to their lowest level in 2 years. Sir Keir Starmer is campaigning in Scotland today, where he's expected to outline plans to cut bills and boost energy security through a publicly owned green electricity company. Labour will argue families are still paying too much for energy despite today's reduction in the price cap. The average bill will fall by 7%, or around £122 per household. Rishi Sunak's heading to Northern Ireland this morning. The Conservatives are expected to say they've brought economic stability back, and they'll criticise Labour's net zero plans and the cost of putting them in place. Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho has told GB News the energy crisis is the government's priority.
My priority is cheap energy for the country. I know that that's how the country will succeed or fail, whether you're businesses or household. It's really important that we get people cheap energy. And actually, if you look at Ed Miliband's plans, even places like the Tony Blair Institute have said that his plans, which have decarbonisation targets that no other major country have, are going to raise people's bills and hike people's taxes. And we've looked at these numbers, and I should tell you that that's something like £2,000 worth of extra taxes on households because of their overall plans over the course of the next Parliament.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn's announced he will stand as an independent MP in the general election against the party he once led. The former Labour leader says he'll stand as a voice for equality, democracy and peace in Islington North, which he's represented since 1983. It means Mr Corbyn has automatically been expelled as a member of the Labour Party, which suspended him in 2020 over his refusal to accept the party broke equality law when he was in charge. He claimed at the time anti-Semitism had been dramatically overstated for political reasons. Hundreds of sub-postmasters caught up in the Post Office Horizon scandal will have their names cleared later, as Parliament has backed legislation to quash their convictions. The Post Office Offences Bill will receive royal assent on the final sitting day of Parliament before everything halts ahead of the election on the 4th of July. Meanwhile, Paula Venables will soon appear in front of the inquiry for the final time. Later, the former Post Office boss has already admitted it was possibly her hope that a mediation scheme with sub-postmasters would minimise compensation. We'll have much more news at the top of the hour. You can get more now by scanning the QR code on your screen for GB News alerts. Now it's back to Mark and Nana.
Well, hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Nana Akua and Mark Dolan. Forget about Starmer and Sunak. This is the dream team, I think you'll agree.
This is like Bodie and Doyle.
And you know what we're going to do? We are going to entertain you. Of course, we've got election fever. Why this campaign matters to you. Sunak versus Starmer, a presidential election.
Well, no, hang on. You can't forget the others. There's Reform and there's...
Plaid Cymru, the Labour, you've got...
Liberal Democrats, so it's not just them.
It's a free-for-all.
And they'll all have some part to play in the election. It doesn't matter. It might be a hung parliament. And we're in day 2 of that campaign, and the Prime Minister has actually questioned the Labour leader's courage.
Yes, indeed. Rishi Sunak wants to debate Sir Keir Starmer every week in the run-up to voting day. This would be 6 TV debates, but the Labour leader has only agreed to take part in 2.
I wonder why. Well, earlier this morning, when asked about taking part in a TV debate, Starmer said of the Prime Minister, he is sounding increasingly desperate. I can do 100 debates with Rishi Sunak, but I know what he is going to say.
Yes, the Leader of the Opposition went on to say he's going to say everything is fine, the cost of living crisis is over, the health service hasn't got any problems. That is all he ever says.
Well, I don't think that's really fair criticism at all, because he has never said that the health service hasn't got any problems. That's what he's saying. Keir, come on, be honest. Rishi Sunak has never said the health service hasn't got any problems.
Now, this tells you...
That's not true.
No, this election,
it's not true, is
this
it?
election, Nana Akua, is going to be the dirtiest in British political history. You've already got the Tories calling Starmer spineless Starmer. Now you've effectively got Sir Keir, the Leader of the Opposition, gaslighting the Prime Minister, putting words in his mouth. It's going to get ugly very fast.
But it's very performative, all of this. I mean, do these TV debates make any difference to you and how you vote? Well, former Labour MP Sean Simon, the columnist of the Daily Telegraph, Madeleine Grant. Welcome. Right, so, Madeleine, I'm going to start with you. Are these debates relevant? I mean, is this not just more performative theatre, like the weekly questions of Prime Minister questions? Is this really what the British public want?
Well, I mean, I think you can basically say that all politics is theatre and performance. There's a very large element of that. And, it is only fair and right that our politicians are actually sort of out there in public having these debates. I've always loved the cut and thrust of politics. I like the fact that in the House of Commons, the two sides of the two benches, the opposition benches and the Conservative benches right now, at least, they are deliberately positioned so that they can be 2 sword widths apart, because historically there was duelling taking place in the House of Commons. I don't think politics should be neutered. Certainly, many people watching it may think that, especially if it happens week after week after week, as it did, for example, in the Tory hustings between Sunak and Liz Truss, probably the same lines being rehashed over and over again. However, if the debate were to be conducted over, for example, each week we debate a different issue, this week it's cost of living, next week it's defence, I can see how you might actually start to get more answers that way.
Sean, why won't Keir Starmer allow himself to do more than 2 TV debates? Why not 6, as the Prime Minister is requesting?
I mean, why not 60? I mean, or 100?
Why not 6 is the question. Well, that's one a week. That doesn't sound unreasonable to connect with and address the issues facing the country.
it's not just unreasonable, like it's ridiculous. Like there's never been anything like 6, and there never will be anything like 6 leadership debates in a British general election. There didn't used to be any at all. And the Tories, like, I mean, you said, is this performance? It's not just the debates that are performance. The Tories cooking up this story on day 2 or whatever it is pure performance as well. They know with absolute certainty that there's no chance Keir Starmer's going to do 6 debates any more than any politician in the lead ever would do 6 debates. Not only that, they don't actually want to do 6 debates. Rishi Sunak is a terrible debater. Keir Starmer's quite wooden, but Rishi Sunak's actively dislikable.
Well, then why doesn't Starmer say bring it on? If Rishi Sunak is so wooden, he would be beneficial to do 6 debates.
Because he's got better things to do, actually engaging with the people around the country in the issues in the election. He's doing 2 debates. 2 debates is what you do. I mean, this is pure campaign slapstick from the Tories.
Do you think... but I can't get over the time when Keir Starmer was going to do some sort of press conference or whatever it was, and he started with, oh, yes, I've agreed to start with Sky News, and went straight to Beth Rigby, and I just thought, they'd already set up what they're going to do, what they're going to say. Madeleine, do you really think that these debates will be useful? Because you seem to think they would be, but yet they're all really staged. The questioning will be all the usual sort of thing. And as Sean is saying, you know, we'd rather people, in a sense, was talking to the public directly about the issues that matter to them rather than just talking to each other.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's good. It's good for leaders to have that sort of cut and thrust and the opportunity to piece each other apart. But I mean, it doesn't mean that you can't also have strong interviews. By the way, I'm not saying that I think we should have, you know, 1 a week or whatnot. But I remember when Boris Johnson in 2019 was refusing to do that many, he was accused of being, you know, frit and fearful. So this is nothing new here, nothing new under the sun. I mean, earlier on this morning, for instance, Keir Starmer was on the Today programme where he acquitted himself very, very badly. I thought it was an excruciating interview. With a very when you have talented interviews, we have many on GBNews and on other TV channels. This can be, you know, very important, especially when what they're able to expose, what they're able to get the leader or the prime minister or the leader of the opposition to say is something that feeds into people's overall impressions of them. So, for example, I think a lot of people feel with Keir Starmer that they don't really know what he stands for because he's pivoted on so many of his seminal policies. And I'm not sure, for example, that the excuse of, oh, the economic circumstances have changed is quite enough to cut it. Because when, for example, Cameron and Osborne took over in 2010, they inherited a very bad economy, but that didn't stop the left from being like, evil Tory cuts, how dare you? You know, so it goes both ways. And to pretend that this is all kind of brand new and the Tories are just clutching their pearls for the sake of it, well, you know, welcome to politics.
Sean Simon, the refusal by Starmer to do more than 2 debates, which I think is a measly number, 2 debates in a 6-week campaign is pathetic. He sounds like he's avoiding scrutiny. The messaging here is a disaster.
It's not a measly number. 2 is a normal number. 6 is an absurd number. There's never been 6. There's never been 6 debates. There's no demand for 6 debate. People want to watch the football. They don't want to watch 6. Like, do you really like you're professional broadcasters?
Let's not get carried away.
You speak for yourself.
Doing a new kind of news TV that is all about talking directly to normal people. Do you really think they want to listen to Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak?
No, we don't. No, we don't. But to be fair, when Keir Starmer couldn't say what a woman is, and you know, Rishi Sunak
changed his mind on that. By the way,
his mind.
Women are women again. Who knew?
And Rishi Sunak has, you know, changed and backtracked on things as well. The pair of them have got themselves into hot water. It's quite important, actually, in some respects, that they are held to account by the public. But I'm actually with you on there. I think 6 is a lot. I'd like to see them do at least GBNews as well. Maggie, what
is it? BBC, ITV and GBNews. Call it 3.
Yeah. Would you settle on 3, Madeleine?
Well, I mean, I don't really have a horse in this race. I will have to watch them all because I will presumably have to sketch them too. I certainly remember in the summer of 2022, when we had the never-ending Tory leadership hustings, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind, because I had heard Liz Truss talking about the planning meetings in her constituency. I don't know, it was kind of, by the end, it was kind of etched into my brain. So I definitely think you can have a certain amount of overkill. But, you know, Keir Starmer is, I guess, resisting agreeing to more than the requisite to, because, you know, he correctly senses that he's in the strong position and therefore has the most to lose.
Madeleine, sorry to interrupt you. Do you think our viewers and listeners should be offended that Sir Keir Starmer has not done a leader debate? We've had the Prime Minister on this channel, who was all too happy to be exposed to many difficult questions from our viewers and listeners. If Keir Starmer says he's only going to do 2, that implies it will be BBC and ITV. Do you think it's an insult to GB News and our audience that he won't participate in a similar grilling here?
Well, we don't know that, though. He may not have been.
Well, he hasn't said yes so far, and if there are going to be 2 debates, it won't be GB News, will it, Madeleine?
I doubt it. I think Keir Starmer is more of I suppose, a traditionalist when it comes to the media. I don't think he likes upstart outlets like GB News. But no, I mean, I think it's a bit patronising to kind of limit yourself like this. I mean, you're going to be running the country soon, so you want the utmost scrutiny, the utmost opportunity for debate. You know, I think it would be right, especially because in previous election cycles, we haven't had the plurality of media that now exists. You know, I don't know, was GB News even around during the last general election? I don't think it was.
Yeah, Sean Simon, if Keir Starmer only does 2 debates, which is his position right now, that'll be BBC and ITV. Is that an insult to the GB News viewers and listeners who are growing by the day?
No, it's 100% definitely not an insult. It's reasonable. It's reasonable for the leader of the opposition, who's the favourite to win the general election, in a general election campaign, to do 2 debates with the 2 main traditional broadcasters.
Why is GB News good enough for the Prime Minister of this country and not the leader of the opposition?
I'm not saying... I mean, Rishi Sunak hasn't done a GB News debate in the general election debate in the middle of the general election campaign. And I'm not saying that Keir Starmer shouldn't. I'm just answering the question, is it an insult? No, I don't think it's an insult. I think it's a fairly predictable, conventional decision that if you're going to pick 2, you're probably going to pick the 2 oldest ones. But, you know, maybe he'll do GB News. And so...
Yes, we'd like him to, Sean Simon and also Madeleine Grant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean. Great job. And Madeleine as well. Still to come, we've got some great news about your energy bills at last. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with the dream team of Aquia and Dolan, and it is in that order.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The most sexiest man in the UK at the moment, as voted for by a dating website, is that man on your screen, Jeremy Clarkson. I'm sorry, Peter, I know he's a man of a certain age, but I'm not getting this one.
Are you not?
No.
This is another reason for an old wrinkly like me to be deeply joyous. Hope springs eternal. He's grey-haired, he's balding, he's got a bit of a pot belly, he's quite tall. You know, I reckon I might be in without a shower.
As long as it's only hope springing eternal, love. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I agree with you. A lot of guys watching this will really be a bit befuddled as to how he's the sexiest guy. I think it's a sympathy vote.
No, I get it. I understand it.
But he's got a sense of humour, and he's got plenty of money.
But what's there to understand? How is he the sexiest man?
I'll tell you why. Because he's and I say this as a bloke, he's a man's man. He gets stuck in, he's involved, he's practical, he's physical.
Does that make him
funny?
sexy, though?
He's got money. I think men these days are, if you ask me, too effeminate. Women don't want that. Women, well, I don't know what...
What do women want? Go on, just mansplain to me what women want. Go on,
tell us,
Thank you very much. No, this is voted for by it's an illicit dating website, OK?
Oh, was it an affairs website?
Married women. But Idris Elba came third.
I just think Jez he's a man's man. Like I said, he's physical, he gets involved, he likes a beer, he's got plenty of money. How much did he get for the farm on Amazon?
That's so silly. So you're implying women only go for men with money?
Well, no, but I mean...
He did, didn't he? Just said that, yeah. He's got plenty of money for sex.
It's normal for women to want to be with a man who can look after them, no?
No. Will you stop mansplaining what women want?
My mum had an expression, Ben. She said, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. But trust me, if Idris Elba gets himself a pair of wellies, he'll be second next year.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
At last, some much-needed good news. The average household could be more than £120 better off every year when Ofgem lowers its price cap by 7% in July. Our business and economics editor, Liam Halligan, joins us now. Liam, why has this happened?
This has happened because wholesale energy prices have gone down across the world because geopolitical tensions, war in Ukraine, violence in the Middle East and so on, while those geopolitical tensions are still there, they've slightly abated in recent months. So wholesale energy prices have come down. So Ofgem, which is the energy regulator, has put a lower cap on. And let's have a look at some of the numbers, what it actually means for GB News viewers and listeners who are paying their energy bills. So the energy price cap, it's changed every quarter, and the average gas and electricity combined bill will now be £1,568 a year from July. That's down 7% on present levels, a saving of around £122 a year. The cap, though, I'm afraid, Mark, is likely to rise again in October.
What, when the weather gets cold?
Partly because of the weather, partly because there's also an expectation that geopolitical tension will crank up again. And just bear in mind, and this is really the killer, even though the price cap has come down for now, the standard bill was £1,084 a year before the war in Ukraine, way down from what the average is going to be from July to October of 1,500 plus. So it seems to me that the war in Ukraine, this growing tension, the fact that Russia now doesn't send so much of its oil and gas westward, it tends to send it eastward to China. A lot of the geopolitical plates have shifted. It does seem to me now there is a permanent increase in gas and electricity bills. And these, not just for households, OK, also for firms. Our firms face the highest unit electricity costs of any major economy in Western Europe. That feeds into inflation, that feeds into lower productivity, that feeds into lower growth.
But they never, ever... I mean, for them to even put the prices down, it makes a change. And typical that it should go up when obviously we're going to use more heating. So what about the GB energy that the Labour Party are talking about? What impact, in your view, would that have on prices? Because they're going to have to get the money off something, so I'm presuming that there'll be some sort of levy or tax on energy.
Well, there's now, because we're in election mode, suddenly everybody is wheeling out policy promises left, right and centre. I mean, on front of the newspaper today, Tories to cut green levies on fuel bills, they're suddenly saying. Maybe fuel bills will come down under the Tories. They're trying to promise us if those subsidies that we pay through our gas and electricity bills that then go to renewable firms to build the wind farms, to build the solar farms and so on, maybe they will come down, though I wouldn't hold my breath about it. As far as Labour's plans go, GB Energy, I'd like to say that I could give you a detailed set of analysis, Nana, about what they're going to do, but I can't because I don't know, because the detail just isn't there. It seems to me at the moment it's just a slogan. GB Energy. Switch. But what does it mean? I don't actually know, and I've tried to find out. Maybe over the coming weeks of this election campaign, we'll find out more, because believe you me, before the war in Ukraine, the idea that I'd come into the studio and talk to you guys about gas and electricity bills and energy price caps, this was Nerdsville, Tennessee. You know, no one was talking about this stuff. Gas and electricity bills were roughly what they were. They weren't too bad. They were just direct debits for most of us. Some of us on prepayment, of course. There have been some improvements in the way lower income prepayment households have been treated in recent years, but not too many. They still get a raw deal. They still pay higher unit electricity costs than the rest of us. But it wasn't mainstream politics. Energy prices are now mainstream politics, and that is going to be a big part of this election campaign.
Liam Hannigan, thank you very much. Well, it's still to come. We'll bring you the latest from Mallorca, where 4 people have been killed and at least 17 are injured after a building collapsed. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some breeze, some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine. Highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
On the M62 in East Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound after an accident between junctions 38 and 37 from North Cape to Howden. It's slow towards there. In Derbyshire, the A50 is closed westbound from junction 4 at Toyota Island to 5 at Hilton after a lorry caught fire causing long delays. Trains aren't stopping at Wolverhampton station because of a signalling problem. Buses running between Wolverhampton and Birmingham International. In Suffolk, the A14 is blocked eastbound by an accident at junction 39 at Kentford with queues in both directions. On the M25 in Essex, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise just before junction 26 at Waltham Abbey after an accident with queues from junction 27 for the M11. In Surrey on the A3, 2 lanes are closed northbound for repairs between Hook and Tolworth with queues from Esher Common, and there are delays of up to an hour to DFDS sailings between Dover and Dunkirk after a technical problem earlier on. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. If you just tuned in, where have you been? It's 10 o'clock, it's Friday, it's the 24th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Aquir and Mark Nolan.
Yes, indeed, and we've got a nasty case of election fever. TV debate debacle. The Tories have slammed Sir Keir Starmer for failing to commit to a record 6 TV debates. And why hasn't the Leader of the Opposition agreed to GB News yet? Olivia Utley has the latest.
Yes, Rishi Sunak wants 6 TV debates, turning this into something of a presidential contest. But will he regret the strategy with low personal popularity ratings? Find out more with me very soon.
Yes, 666, is that the number of the devil? But the return of Corbyn, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has announced that he will stand as an independent candidate in Islington North in the general election.
Jez is back, Jez we can. Meanwhile, a tragic story, chaos in Mallorca. At least 4 dead and others trapped under rubble after a devastating restaurant building collapse on a beach in Mallorca. We'll have the latest.
And the denials continue at the Post Office inquiry as the former Post Office boss, Paula Vanells, said that she did not try to close down a review of the faulty Horizons software. Her questioning continues today.
Don't you think that Paula Vanells owes the Prime Minister a drink for calling a snap election? Because she needs scrutiny and she thinks she's off the hook because of all the politics, but we will be holding her feet to the fire, won't we?
Absolutely. No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot going on and we'll keep track of that as well.
Most definitely. We'd love to hear what you think. Send your views and your thoughts to gbnews.com/your say. Lots to get through. A busy, 2.5 hours? I tell you, we keep ourselves busy. First, the headlines and Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, it is 2 minutes past 10. Good morning to you, I'm Aaron Armstrong. Energy policy and the cost of living look set to become an electoral dividing line, with household bills falling to their lowest level in 2 years. Sir Keir Starmer is campaigning in Scotland today, where he's expected to outline plans to cut bills and boost energy security through the publicly owned Green Power Company. Labour will argue families are still paying too much, despite today's reduction in the energy price cap. The average bill will fall by 7%, or around £122 per household. Rishi Sunak's heading to Northern Ireland this morning. The Conservatives are expected to say they've brought economic stability back, and they'll criticise the costs of Labour's net zero plans. Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho told GB News energy prices are coming down.
My priority is cheap energy for the country. I know that that's how the country will succeed or fail, whether you're businesses or household. It's really important that we get people cheap energy. And actually, if you look at Ed Miliband's plans, even places like the Tony Blair Institute have said that his plans, which have decarbonisation targets that no other major country have, are going to raise people's bills and hike people's taxes. And we've looked at these numbers, and I should tell you that that's something like £2,000 worth of extra taxes on households because of their overall plans over the course of the next Parliament.
Sir Ed Davies says the Liberal Democrats would slash energy bills by investing in home insulation and boosting renewables. MP Helen Morgan says her party's ideas are influencing government policy.
Well, I think we've always been able to influence the agenda, even though we're not a particularly big party. So if you look, for example, at the windfall tax, we started calling for one of those in October 21 to help people out with their energy bills. That later became Labour policy, and then that became government policy. So it's really, really important to set the agenda, and we have proved that we can be effective.
Jeremy Corbyn's confirmed he'll stand as an independent candidate in the general election against the party he once led. The former Labour leader says he'll run as a voice for equality, democracy and peace in Islington North, which he's represented since 1983. He's automatically been expelled as a member of Labour, which had suspended him back in 2020 over claims that complaints of anti-Semitism in the party had been, in his words, dramatically overstated for political reasons. In a video posted to social media, Mr Corbyn said his constituents had been denied the right to choose their candidate.
Democracy. I want our political parties to be democratic, but members of Islington North Labour have been denied the right to choose their own candidate, and alongside that, the community as a whole has been disempowered because of that. So we have to stand up. We have to stand up and say, we're not taking this anymore. We will assert our rights.
Veteran Conservative MP John Redwood has confirmed he won't stand for re-election. The former party leadership candidate, who's represented Wokingham since 1987, says he has other things he wishes to do. And more than 70 Tory MPs have announced they won't stand at the next election, and 100 in total will be stepping down. Hundreds of sub-postmasters caught up in the Horizon scandal will have their names cleared after Parliament-backed legislation to quash their convictions. The bill will receive royal assent on the final day of Parliament before MPs break up for the general election. Meanwhile, Paula Venables has begun giving her third and final day of evidence at the Post Office inquiry, as you can see on the live pictures here. The former Post Office boss has already admitted it was possibly her hope that a mediation scheme with sub-postmasters would minimise compensation. Child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost an appeal to challenge her convictions. Letby's lawyers had asked judges for the right to appeal at a 2.5-day hearing last month. Well, the former nurse was sentenced to 14 whole life orders for murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. 4 people have been killed and at least 17 injured after a building collapsed on the Spanish island of Mallorca. A 2-storey restaurant collapsed on the beach in Palma de Mallorca, a tourism hotspot in Spain's Balearic Islands. They were taken to various hospitals in Palma. Emergency crews say they're finalising their search and rescue operations and securing the area. And have you been getting ripped off in the pub? More than 2/3 of beer and wine served in British establishments are short-measured. A new survey from the Trading Standards found 77 pubs and bars were serving around 70% less than the prescribed quantity required. For the average beer drinker, that equates to the loss of £1.70 every week, or just over £88 a year. And the average wine drinker would be around £2.20 short each week. And the survey comes as the cost of a pint and other drinks hits an all-time high. We'll have more coming up throughout the morning and the afternoon here on GB News, or you can scan the QR code to get our news alerts. Now it's back to Mark and Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. It's fast approaching 8 minutes after 10 o'clock. Hello and welcome to Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Akweer and Mark Doland.
We've got election fever. What do you think about this? Rishi Sunak, the Brits love an underdog. Does that help the Prime Minister? Also, are Labour ready for power? So much to get through. New migration figures as well. But first, your all-important feedback.
Right, well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts because we've called, we've asked just say join the show, enjoy it, Mark. Does cheer everyone up. He's saying. It does make me laugh out loud, but you're going to have to behave. You're with the lovely Nana. Brilliant pairing.
Well, I am. I'm on my best behaviour today with Nana. Listen, about a couple of emails coming in. This from Eileen, who is a GB News member, who says the energy crisis in our country wasn't caused by the war in Ukraine. It's been caused by successive governments neglecting to invest in nuclear energy. This is the problem with short-termism that infects British politics.
Now, we were saying that we'd love to get Keir Starmer on here as well to do a similar debate that Rishi Sunak did, and we could do it with Reform and all the other candidates. Andy has said, Nana and Mark, you must listen to the interview with Sir Keir Starmer on BBC Today on Radio 4. He was stuttering, sidestepping the question and flipping on all his pledges. Well, I didn't hear it, but that's why. Do you think that's why it's quite important to get them to do 6 weeks of debates, to get them to talk 6 debates?
Most definitely. I mean, the key message, politics is all about messaging. Keir Starmer refuses to do more than 2 TV debates. What that tells us is that he doesn't want scrutiny. Why? Because perhaps, he's not so sure about his policies. Does he have a plan?
Maybe, but also, to be fair to him, though, when you hear him on Prime Minister's Questions, he does pretty well, doesn't he? And he bounces. I don't think Rishi Sunak does such a good job in Prime Minister's Questions. So I think, actually, getting him to talk might be a good thing. But this one from Wendy says, and we're talking about green energy, Liam Halligan was mentioning it. Wendy says, Labour's green energy strategy is a big lie. Energy costs will skyrocket along with household bills. It is unscientific. It will bankrupt the country, and Labour's policy on being an energy superpower is truly dishonest and must be exposed. I hear them, but half of me says that owning your own energy supply is a good thing. So I don't know how you come to it.
Let me tell you, I'm not worried about our future because you've got green energy this morning.
I am green.
Let me tell you, you could power a city the size of Birmingham in that fabulous outfit. The concern I've got, I think it's laudable, the idea of energy independence. What no one is willing to admit in this net zero debate is that renewables are a punt. They are a grand-scale experiment, plus they're expensive as well. What is not an experiment and what is proven is nuclear, which is why I completely agree with that previous message from one of our viewers. It was Ed Davey who, during the coalition years, was very proud to announce that we won't be investing any more nuclear because of the environment.
Yeah.
And they proudly announced that was going to be... of course, now, if we had that nuclear capacity from the 2010s, we'd be laughing, like France are.
Well, look, speaking of the Lib Dems, General Urko, as he calls himself, says that the Lib Dems...
Sounds like a military man.
I know.
Is he a war hero, General Urko?
He says the Lib Dems can promise what they like, green air, green jackets or green giants. It's pretty pointless.
Listen, I'm very excited about this election, OK? I think the Prime Minister shot with starting pistols very unexpectedly. And I don't know about you, but I think by calling an election and surprising everyone, he has gained control of the agenda. I think Sunak is owning this.
Do you know what? Half of me... Well, the thing is, though, a lot of the pledges that he's put forward, like his smoking one, he's not going to be able to do that, obviously.
No, stub that one out.
Very good. I love that. Very good.
Up in smoke.
Excellent. Very good. Yeah, so he's not going to be able to do half the things that he said he was going to do. But he wrong-footed people. And I think that is the element of surprise. He's wrong-footed. Reform don't have enough time. They said they're going to stand 630 candidates. Will they have enough time to find 630 candidates in 6 weeks? The Labour Party, Keir Starmer did a rushed speech, which was very short. Clearly, I don't think he was expecting it either. And also, then you have Reform and all the other parties sort of scuttling around.
Yes.
So I think, in a way, the element of surprise is good.
Well, Tim Stanley, writing in the Telegraph, said this is the best thing Rishi Sunak has ever done. Most people think it's a disaster. The other thing I want to say to you, Nana, is that the British people love an underdog. And I just wonder whether that helps Rishi Sunak. There he is, in the rain, his suit getting completely soaked, drowned out by some guy playing Labour anthems in the background. I just wonder whether that serves him politically. Well, we'll dig into that very shortly. But the Prime Minister's decision to call an election on the 4th of July will mean that the government avoids the worst of the small boat crisis in the months ahead, when thousands of small boat migrants are expected to cross the Channel in the hot and calm summer months.
So already this year we've had almost 10,000 small boat people coming across. They've crossed from France. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White is in Dover. So Mark, what can you tell us? Have we had any crossings today? What's the tally?
Good morning to you both. Yes, just within the last 15 minutes, we've had our first crossing of the day, the first crossing for a couple of days because of fairly windy weather in the Channel, but conditions have improved overnight and the boats are back in the water again, and we are creeping ever closer to that 10,000 mark, that milestone figure that we didn't reach until well into June last year, but it looks like by some point this morning or this afternoon that we'll get to 10,000. So the Dover lifeboat has just come into the harbour here with 43 migrants on board. As we speak, another migrant boat is in the process of the occupants of that transferring to a border force vessel, and yet another one, a third migrant boat, still in the Channel, heading to UK waters with about half an hour to go. This is the kind of process that by going early on the 4th of July, Rishi Sunak will avoid the worst of. In other words, the flat, calm period from late July, August, September, where you get many thousands crossing the English Channel, sometimes 1,000 a day. Very difficult for him to go to the electorate in November if he's had a really bumper year, especially if we've had flights going off to Rwanda and it's not proved to be a deterrent. By going early, by going on the 4th of July, he avoids all that and he's able to say, well, look at last year, we have brought the number of small boats crossing the English Channel last year down by 36%. Well, I can tell you that this year already the numbers crossing the English Channel are up 36%, completely cancelling out the good work of last year.
It'll be interesting because obviously, as you said, Mark, the worst of it will be July, August, September, and that will be if Labour win under their watch.
Well, yes, indeed. The optics of the busy summer months are never good when they see the cameras up here on the cliff top overlooking the harbour at Dover, recording boat after boat coming in. That is always a very critical period for the government, whichever government, because of the concerns that we're just not in charge of our borders. And you're absolutely right. If Labour do win the election on the 4th of July, then that headache, the very busy summer months, suddenly becomes their headache.
Yeah, very briefly, Mark, we've only got a couple of seconds. Clearly, those crossings are going to increase in their number in the weeks ahead during the election campaign. Perversely, could that help the Conservatives by bringing into sharp focus what a huge problem this is?
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, the Conservative Party believe that they do have a strong message on immigration. They believe that Labour don't have the answers, actually, to ending this problem, despite Labour saying that they're going to invest more in the National Crime Agency and the like, that there is no real key plan that would bring the numbers down. So that's something that the Conservatives will continue to try and chip away at Keir Starmer's Labour Party in the weeks ahead. But of course, if many boats come across in the next 6 weeks, that doesn't look good for the government either, given that they're currently in charge and they're currently trying to ensure that the numbers crossing this year are down on what they were last year.
Well, Mark White, thank you very much.
Brilliant stuff. Well, we've got a developing story now on baby serial killer Lucy Letby and her bid to appeal her convictions at the Court of Appeal. Let's cross to our Northwest reporter, Sophie Reaper, for more. Sophie, what's the latest?
Well, in the last few minutes, we have heard that Lucy Letby has had her application to appeal against her convictions denied. At the Court of Appeal, we heard that, in fact, that application that was brought about last September by Letby and her defence team to try and overturn those convictions has been disproved. We heard from Dame Victoria, one of the panel of 3 judges. She said, having heard her application, we have decided to refuse leave to appeal on all grounds and refuse all associated applications. A full judgment will be handed down in due course. Now, the reason for this happening today is because the application was heard back in April, but the panel of 3 judges decided to reserve that judgment, and that is why we are only just hearing their decision today. And over the coming weeks, we will hear more detail, but as I say, it has been denied. Now, what that essentially means is it was only an application to begin with. The actual appeal hadn't even really gone through whatsoever. So the fact that this application has been denied means that Lucy Letby's appeal process is completely over and done with. She will now, unless new evidence were to come to light in the future, she will now spend the rest of her life in prison. So of course, this isn't the end of the Lucy Letby saga, though. We have a retrial taking place at Manchester Crown Court starting in the next couple of weeks. We also have the Thirlwall inquiry beginning in September, which will look into serious failings at the Countess of Chester and how it was allowed to happen. These crimes which, although Letby has tried to appeal against, that, as I say, has now officially been denied.
Reaper, thank you so much for bringing us up to speed.
Right, well, still to come, we're expecting Sir Keir Starmer to appear any minute as he launches Labour's general election campaign in Scotland. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Do not go anywhere.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
2,000 football banning orders have been issued to England fans ahead of this summer's Euro 2024 tournament in Germany. But authorities think that more than 300,000 England supporters could go to Germany, with Scotland fans, of course, also expected to travel in huge numbers. Well, I'm joined now by GB News' home and security editor, Mark White. Mark, welcome to the show. So you went to a press briefing this morning. As I understand, the authorities are gearing up to tackle what they see as a huge wave of potential hooliganism at the tournament. What's the latest?
Well, they're certainly not saying they're expecting hooliganism, and they are preparing for the worst, of course, if it happens, but hoping for the best. They say that in recent tournaments, England fans and, of course, Scotland fans have been pretty well behaved, but there will be very significant numbers attending that tournament, which gets underway in just over 5 weeks' time. That first match is Scotland taking on Germany in Munich, and of course just 2 days later it's England against Serbia near Dortmund. So 300,000 England fans alone they're expecting, because it's so accessible. I spoke earlier to Chief Constable Mark Roberts, who is the national lead for football policing. This is what he told me.
Positive, you know, England fans got a great record at recent tournaments. We know when any number of that people travel, there's always potential for issues, but I think the German authorities are really well prepared. And I think one of the positives, particularly thinking about our fans, Germany's a beer drinking culture, so the police are well aware of dealing with people in the nighttime economy. They deal with plenty of big festivals, so I think we're going to a place that is well suited to work with us to keep everyone safe and make sure there's no issues.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, Sir Keir Starmer is launching Labour's general election campaign in Scotland today. Let's cross live.
To send a message, a protest in Westminster. I don't want Scotland to send a message. I want Scotland to send a government, a Labour government. A Labour government that can stop the chaos and division, that can turn the page and rebuild Scotland and Britain. We need that change. The chaos and division has cost. 17 years here in Scotland, spinning round and round with nothing material delivered. 17 years under the SNP. 14 years in Westminster. Chaos and division, feeding chaos and division. And there's a cost, a human cost to that. Anas and I went to a food parcel farm just up the factory up the road, where they were giving out food parcels to people who didn't have enough money to feed themselves and their families. Scottish families, working people, people coming after work to pick up a food parcel because they couldn't afford to feed their family. They are paying a huge price for the failure here in Scotland and for the failure down in Westminster. And that afternoon, Anas, you'll remember this. There was a 7-year-old girl. This was etched on my head. I thought about it all the way home. 7-year-old girl, just a few minutes from here, actually, I think we were, handing out food parcels, hell of a personality. She was really sparkly, incredible. And at the end of the session there, handing out food parcels, I did a piece to camera with an auto cue. And I could see her out the corner of my eye watching me. She was absolutely fascinated with what I was doing with this auto cue. And so when I'd finished, I said to her, why don't you come? Why don't you have a go? And her words will stay with me forever. She said, I don't read, me. I don't read, me. I thought about those words I got the train back to London. I thought about those words all the way back home. I don't read. A 7-year-old girl. I thought about her, I thought about her future. And I thought about the cost that she is paying for the failure here under the SNP and the failure down in Westminster. She is paying that price. And they will not change. The SNP is going to change. The Tories aren't going to change. Only Labour can stop the chaos and turn the page. And here's the good news. You don't have to put up with it anymore. You can vote for change. Under our democracy, the vote now is with you to vote for change. And as Anas has said, here in Scotland with Anas and Jackie and Ian, we've changed the Labour Party. Working with me, we've together changed the Labour Party, put it back in the service of working people. What we now ask, humbly, is for the opportunity to change Scotland and to change Britain for the better and put them back in the service of working people. And I know there are voters here in Scotland who wanted in the past to get the Tories out, but felt that they couldn't vote for Labour because they didn't think that we would win. Well, we're a changed Labour Party, and we now have that opportunity to kick the Tories out, but you have to take that opportunity by voting Labour. Because there's no change without Scotland. There's no Labour without Scotland. Scotland is central to the mission of the next Labour government. And that mission isn't just to turn the page, to bring about the change we desperately need. It's to rebuild. To rebuild, to rebuild, you need a plan for your economy, to get it functioning, working for everyone, with jobs here in Scotland. Now, not far from here, a few miles away, you will know Whiteley's wind farm, up there on the hills. I've been there, an incredible place to go, with wind turbines, huge bits of manufacturing and engineering. It's quite awe-inspiring, hundreds of them, generating power for the future. When I went there with Anas, I asked a simple question of the CEO. I said, how many of these were built in Scotland? And the answer? None of them. Not one. They'd all been towed in past working people in Scotland and put together. That's the price of not making your economy the priority. And we're not prepared to pay that price under a Labour government. But you will never have a strong functioning economy if you don't treat your workforce properly, if you don't give people basic dignity and respect at work. And that's why our new deal for working people will be the biggest act of levelling up for workers' rights in a generation. No more fire and rehire. No more zero-hours contracts. Make work pay. And as Anas has said, our other plan, Great British Energy, a publicly owned company investing in clean British power and based here in Scotland. Jobs in Scotland, keeping prices down across the whole country. So there's a choice at this election, a choice between continuing with chaos and division and failure, or the choice of voting Labour and stopping the chaos and division that is doing so much harm, of turning the page and bringing the change that we need here in Scotland and across Britain, and rebuilding across Scotland and across Britain. That's the choice of the next election. If you want change, you have to vote for it. Thank you so much.
Well, that was Sir Keir Starmer, his launch for his campaign in Scotland. He said that I don't want Scotland to send a message, I want Scotland to send a Labour government. He went on about chaos and division, 17 years under the SNP. He recounted a story of a 7-year-old girl handing out food parcels, and when he read the autocue, he asked her to have a go, and she said, I don't read. He talks about the cost that she is paying for the failure of the SNP, and he was talking also there with regard to Labour. He said it's a changed Labour, and they must take the opportunity. There's no Labour without Scotland, and he was on about rebuilding. Whiteley's wind farm, he made the comments there, where he said that none of those propellers, those wind propellers, turbines were made in this country. And he also said that you can't work well if you don't have a good workforce. No more zero-hour contracts, no more far area hire. He talks about making work pay.
Yeah, most definitely. It was an impassioned speech, I've got to say. He spoke from the heart. A lot of platitudes, though, I thought. End the chaos, turn the page, chaos and division, vote for change. I'm not sure that the public will be persuaded by these slogans. They'll be looking for hard facts and strong policies. Let's get a reaction now from the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and ex-Labour Minister Bill Rammell.
Let's come to Bill first, because he's a Labour man. What were your thoughts on that speech?
I thought it was very good, and I think it's very convincing. I also think it's interesting that he's speaking on the second day of the campaign in Scotland, because Scotland is critical to the Labour Party. You know, remember, last general election, we won just one seat. Latest polls put us 10% ahead in Scotland. likely to win 35 plus seats. And I think that's happened because we're setting out a credible case for change, but also the implosion of the SNP. You know, Nicola Sturgeon's husband being arrested for and charged for embezzlement. And that's restored the normal laws of gravity in Scotland, because for a decade the SNP had been untouchable, but now people are looking at their domestic record, which is shocking. So Scotland is part of the way that we win at the general election.
Yes, I mean, Dawn Neeson, do you think that Scotland is actually central to Keir Starmer's path to number 10? Could it be decisive?
I don't think it would be decisive, no. And I'm with you on this one. I mean, every time I hear a politician making a speech now, I play political bingo and I tick off the phrases they say. He said working people 4 times in that speech. I mean, I'm not even entirely sure what he means by working people. Are you a working person? I think I'm here and I'm working. I'm having fun as well, but I am working. So, I mean, I am at the stage now, and we're only 2 days in, aren't we, where I'm thinking we have 6 weeks of this, 6 weeks of speeches like that, and at the end of it, we are still going to end up with either Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer. And I'm not sure I can cope with 6 weeks of it, to be honest with you. I just think it's interesting, the Scotland thing, though, because, you know, Keir Starmer infamously didn't know what a woman was. I mean, how can we forget that? And obviously Scotland was the one voting through these ridiculous rules where men could be accessing women's prisons. So it's interesting how that particular issue goes down. But then again, he's up against someone who doesn't know what an umbrella is. So, I mean, it's like, what are we meant to do?
But Dawn, what are your thoughts on the content of what he said, though? Because he said no more fire or rehire, no more zero-hour contracts, make work pay. Now, some people like those things. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Zero-hour contracts are not necessarily an evil thing. Lots of people rely on zero-hour contracts now, and lots of people make them work for them. It's the way working life has changed. So it's that they're not necessarily an evil thing. And I think there will be people who are making those zero-hour contracts work. I'm not saying they're a great thing for everybody. Some people don't like them, but they do work for some people. And the fact that he goes, oh, they're an evil thing, we're getting rid of them. But what I keep coming back to, Nana, is, OK, we're going to make work pay. How? How are you going to make work pay? How are you going to fund your green policies? How are you going to fund all these wind farms that you're going on about? How are you going to improve education, which under the SNP in Scotland, as we know, was appalling, with that little girl not being able to read even, not to mention the drug and drink issues they still have in Scotland, and the various strike issues they've had as well. How is he going to do it? I'm not hearing any facts.
Well,
any
yeah, I mean,
details.
Dawn raises a good point there, Bill, because, you know, Labour administrations have done good things for the country in the past, but what's the point of a Labour government when there's no money to spend?
Well, you can still make a difference. And look, we will get money to spend when we bring back economic growth. And
We've got economic growth.
Sorry.
ONS said we're going gangbusters at the moment.
0.6%.
Well, that's quite good. 2.5% this year, potentially.
The average under the last Labour government was 2.5%. And that's the difference. 150 billion over 13 Labour years compared to the 14 Tory years. So we get that substantial growth to fund better public services. But the short term, we are setting out clearly how we are going to make symbolic improvements. 6,500 extra teachers in schools, paid for by ending the tax breaks for the private schools.
That's across the 5 years, isn't it, or 4 years? And that's presumably if they retain the same number of people at those schools. So you've got a margin, a leeway, but already 2.7% of the parents are now... The figures of people applying have already fallen by just under 3%, and they're concerned that that is only just a small snapshot. So then the money that they're planning to take from that is unlikely to be what they're expecting.
Right, but it's sustainable over the course of the Parliament. The real echo is the pledge card in the run-up to 1997, and there's a lot of history being rewritten about what happened in the run-up to 1997. But there were small steps, like cutting class sizes for every 5, 6 and 7-year-old, 250,000 young people off benefits and into work. It's similar kinds of small, pragmatic changes that people relate to. I think if the Labour Party was standing here now and saying, do you know what, we're going to transform the world in 2 or 3 years, rightly, people wouldn't believe us.
But Bill, how are Labour in government going to boost economic growth when some of their headline policies involve red tape and extra costs for businesses, union power, which could mean more strikes, and more workers' rights and getting rid of zero-hours contracts? How does that boost the economy?
Well, you know, we've we've had more strikes under this government than we had under the last Labour government.
To be fair with that, though, I just have to stop you there. Even the head of the PCS said that we will strike to bring down the government. So a lot of them were politically motivated. So I'm not sure whether that's fair to bring that in and say that. And that is, you know, that's true.
The PCS is a bit of an outlier amongst the big
But a
trade
lot
unions.
of them. But a lot of them.
But, you know, we didn't have strikes in the NHS like we've had under this government. And I tell you what, in terms of security in the workplace, that's extremely popular amongst ordinary working people.
But not employers. And employers are the ones who drive the growth, aren't they? The businesses themselves.
And we've been working with businesses. You know, I saw a business leader recently that you can't go anywhere without talking to Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer. There is a real partnership with business, and that will help to get the economic growth. But I'll tell you one of the biggest ways we're going to transform the economy and get economic growth is the biggest house building programme we've had in a generation. 500,000 houses that are desperately needed, but also that kickstarts the economy and gets us the level of economic growth.
I wonder who's going to pay for that, though.
Well, there's massive demand there, so there's going to be some support from the public sector.
Somebody's got to build them, so I'm wondering who's going to pay for them. If you're saying 500, is it going to be developers, or is the government going to pay for these houses? Well, you know, this is great.
Part of the way you do it is through effective, what are called Section 106 agreements, where, yes, there's the ability for developers, and you know, you remove the red tape in terms of development taking place, but you get them to fund the social housing on the back of that, and it's a win-win.
Well, it sounds too good to be true, and often when it does, it is. And also, let's not forget the immigration situation. If we continue with the mass migration
which the Tories
that we
have let rip.
Well, I'm not saying well done, Tories. I think they've done a terrible job, but that doesn't mean the Labour Party are going to do any better just because the Tories did badly.
Well, I tell you what,
they might do worse.
Don't compare politicians on what they say. Compare them on what they do. When Labour left,
well, I am. And that's exactly what.
Hold on, Anna. When Labour left office, asylum numbers were a third of what they are today. The Tories have completely lost control of the system.
Listen, nobody's saying that. You won't have a disagreement there. I agree with you.
OK,
100%.
I mean, Dawn Neeson, will Labour be the party and the government of growth? Will they be business-friendly?
Well, I mean, according to the GBNews poll, I mean, people do think that Labour will manage the economy better than the Conservatives. That's 35% say Labour will, 19% say Conservatives. 46% say they don't know, though. And I think the situation where we are now, I was talking with Bill before we came in here, is there are an awful lot of people out there who are confused what both of the main parties stand for. And we know there is division in both of those parties as well. Bill, stop looking at me like that. And it's like... so there is division. And it's interesting that people... The GB poll seems to show that the Labour are more trusted on the economy and on the immigration issue as well.
Really?
So that is interesting result.
GBNews viewers believe that the Labour Party can be more trusted. But to be fair, the Conservative Party have messed it up completely. They've royally done it. Now, Bill, former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has announced that he will stand as an independent candidate in Islington North in the general election. Is that interesting news? I mean, does anyone care? It's Islington North. It's not really going to affect the major... It's not going to
be seismic, but I actually think it's good news for the Labour Party because it defines the strength of Keir's leadership. You know, he booted Corbyn out of the parliamentary Labour Party. He's rooted out anti-Semitism, which in large part Corbyn was responsible for, and he's rooted out the Corbynistas across the country. Compare and contrast with Rishi Sunak, who, you know, couldn't even bring himself to vote against Boris Johnson on the Privileges Committee report. So, you know, I think Corbyn, who I think was the most dreadful Labour leader we've ever had, the fact that he's going to stand as an independent is good news, and it helps to define Keir and the Labour Party.
All right, Bill Rammell and Dawn Neeson, thank you very much.
OK, up next, remember Blockbusters? We'll speak to the man who's bringing it back in his own town. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Lots more election fever to come as well.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Just coming up to 45 minutes after 10 o'clock. This is Britain's newsroom on GB News. Right, let's cross to the Post Office inquiry, where it's the last day for the former boss, Paula Vinnells. She's giving evidence.
I've spoken to the inquiry about this with Mr. Beer. I was briefed by Leslie. As I explained, I came across her in a corridor looking frustrated about something. We had a conversation. She explained that... And I don't believe she dismissed it as an inconvenience, or however you suggested.
The question I'm putting to you is that you were fully briefed about this, about risk, by Susan Crichton. What do you say to that?
I was briefed by Susan that Gareth Jenkins could no longer be used. I'm not sure what you mean by risk. What I know now is much more about this, that Gareth Jenkins hadn't been properly briefed in the first place as an expert witness. But at the time, I had no idea of the contents of the Simon Clarke advice.
I want to ask you, please, because I'm going to suggest to you that you must have known about this by the end of August. And I want to take you to POL 001 08065.
Well, you can be asked a question there, and it's gone very quiet in the...
Most definitely. Now, Paula Vinnells, she has expressed emotion in the last 24 hours. She has been reduced to tears. She's also said that she did her best, but it wasn't good enough. And this was clearly a very challenging thing to go through for Paula Venables. She left the post office several years ago, but this scandal remains. And notwithstanding all of the noise around a general election, the public, our viewers and listeners, are furious about the way that those sub-postmasters were treated. And many, Nana Akua, consider this woman to be responsible. After all, she was the head of the operation when this happened.
Well, that's the thing. And the other day when she was being held to account, she was crying while she was talking, and the judge said, can you sort of stop crying and just talk, or cry first and then talk?
Yeah.
Because frankly, you know, whilst it's very distressing for her, imagine how distressing it's been for these postmasters. There was also something where apparently they claimed that she knew that there was a problem with the system, and had she put that forward earlier, things would have changed, but she's denied that she knew.
Well, it's critically important that the victims of the post office scandal get justice, which is why this is one inquiry that has great value. It's very important. Unlike that COVID inquiry, which they reckon is going to report in 2026 and cost £200 million.
It just takes
Let me give you my inquiry findings. Lockdowns destroyed the country and didn't work. There you go. Of course.
Well, it depends.
Not everyone agrees with me on that one.
No, they don't, because it depends what the disease is. If it's Ebola, you'd want to lock down.
There you go.
But do you remember Blockbuster? Hey, what a difference. Yeah, Blockbuster Video. Yes, the much-loved video shop sadly went bust.
I love it when you sing, by the way. You can really carry a tune, can't you?
I can do Tina Turner, Private Dancer. I'm very good.
Maybe after the show.
I'll do that later. But yes, they went bust over 10 years ago. Well, a nostalgic film buff has built his own miniature version outside his home for fellow villagers to borrow DVDs.
Yes, Peter Goddard joins us now from Alderholt. Peter, congratulations on the project. Why have you started this enterprise?
Oh, we can't hear him. He's coming.
Like a little outside library where you can go and get free books, and that's been doing really well. And I think I saw in one of my sort of DVD groups on Facebook that someone in Canada had made like a Blockbuster version of it. And I showed it to my partner, and I said, you know, can I make something like this and put it down the end of our garden? And she wasn't against the idea, and so I just sort of ran with it, and yeah, I just sort of made it.
So how does it work then? It's like, are they free, and is it just DVDs? Nobody's got a VHS player, have they?
I've still got a VHS player. I still play VHS.
I'm not surprised, actually.
and I've got a Betamax player as well. No, it's just DVDs at the moment.
Really?
Yeah, so it's completely free. I just put stuff in there, and people can like leave a film, take a film. I sort of got some bags of popcorn in there as well. So if they want to take a film with their movie night, they can. But it's all completely free, and it's basically like DVDs that I don't mind losing. So if people end up keeping them or not bringing them back, then, you know, that's absolutely fine.
Well, I love the look of your shop, Peter. Congratulations on it. And also, let's be honest, we are in a cost of living crisis. These streaming services like Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Netflix are not cheap, are they? Of course, your DVDs are free, which is a wonderful thing. And also, the quality of DVD is very high, isn't it? I mean, this is top-level digital technology.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I still watch VHS tapes, so I mean, I don't think, whilst kind of like technology has moved on and like kind of resolutions got better, you can still enjoy kind of like lower resolutions, kind of older kind of like media and stuff. So, but yeah, but I've always, going back to sort of the 90s, I grew up in the 90s, so going to the video shops and going down to like my local kind of like video retail shop and sort of buying physical media was kind of like, you know, part of my childhood. And as sort of time went on, as sort of streaming has sort of become really popular, I've sort of never gave up the kind of physical media side of things. So, you know, whilst it's great to watch films on demand, I always find that if you see a film which you really enjoy, then, you know, you kind of want to own that film on like a physical kind of media thing.
I completely agree. It's like having a library of books that you can show off that you've read rather than the Kindle, isn't it?
Well, it is a bit. Look, what's your favourite film then? Mine has got to be, like, if I'm thinking nostalgia, I'm going back, Weird Science. Have you got that on DVD?
Which one's that, sorry?
Weird Science.
Weird Science. No, I've not seen it. I've heard
You
of it.
haven't seen Weird Science? Have you not seen it?
Yeah, I have.
Well, they make a girl.
Kelly LeBrock.
Kelly
is in
LeBrock,
that.
the woman in bed.
Yeah, it's very classic
Great
stuff.
film.
I mean, I've got to ask you,
what's
Peter.
your favourite film?
What's your favourite movie?
Probably Blade Runner. It's one of those films I've
very
seen numerous times. You know, it's a classic.
And what do you watch on VHS?
I like to collect the kind of preset tapes, you know, from like early kind of 80s before kind of like they became certified. So kind of like lots of kind of, and there's a lot of tapes and stuff which have never made it onto DVD. So kind of tracking down kind of weird kind of cult horror films, and then
Are you worried you're going to get a letter, Peter? Are you going to worry you're going to get a letter from the owners of the Blockbuster brand?
Well, I mean, I didn't really think of that when I didn't think it could quite get the sort of media attention it has, to be honest with you. So I didn't think anybody beyond the village would have heard about it. But I don't know. Is Blockbuster still owned by someone?
I think, Peter, take it and run with it. Yeah, you'll be a billionaire within a year.
Peter Goddard, thank you very much. That's Peter Goddard. He's there in old. Very nice. Blockbuster Video, craggy. And he said he's got a Betamax player. God, he's got one of those.
He's a man after my own heart. Well, listen, he's old school.
Lots of you have been getting in touch with a lot of the things we've been talking about. Mike says, in what sort of mad world would any government of any country put into law the date to arrive at net zero, especially when the country only produces less than 1% of the world emissions and they want sensible people to vote for them?
Somebody wants to speak up for Sunak. Matthew says, I think some people forget what happened in the past. If it wasn't for Rishi Sunak doing the furlough scheme, there would be a lot of people out of their homes with no job.
And I love this one. Emily says, love the Nana and Mark combo. They've got a great dynamic. Also, I love how Mark twists his whole body to talk, as though he's got a stiff neck. It's very charming.
We try. Listen, folks, it's a very, very busy show. We are consumed with election fever. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News. Lots more to get through, but first, Annie has your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Pollyanna is not happy on the message board. She says, here's my view of Nigel Farage. I know you don't give us stuff, but you had more than 6 weeks. You sat on the fence playing mind games. You got caught on the left foot by the election being called. Pollyanna not happy that Nigel has basically not participated in the election.
The The next great British giveaway winner could be you, with a massive £20,000 in tax-free cash to be won. Imagine how you'd react getting that winning call from us.
Oh my God, are you joking?
Not lying, I never won a penny in my life.
I don't know what to say.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh, it shocked me.
This is amazing.
For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Friday, the 24th of May. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Nana Akua and Mark Dolan.
Well, the TV debate debacle, the Tories have slammed Sir Keir Starmer for failing to commit to a record 6 TV debates. Do we really want all that? Olivia Utley has the latest.
Also, Farage's final throw of the dice. Farage's final throw of the dice. Nigel has said that he has one more big card to play in politics, but didn't have time to prepare for this summer election.
I had, to be honest with you, put in place some preparations to launch next week.
And former Post Office boss Paula Venables has been accused of trying to keep a lid on the faulty Horizon IT systems at the Post Office inquiry. The questioning continues.
Meanwhile, a tragic story. Chaos in Mallorca. At least 4 people have died and others trapped under rubble after a restaurant building collapses on a beach in Mallorca. We'll have the latest.
And killer nurse Lucy Letby loses her appeal. The court rules that the serial baby killer cannot challenge her convictions.
We'd love to hear what you think. Send your views in to gbnews.com/ Your say, so much to get through in this hour.
A lot to do.
Should Nigel be the leader of Reform UK going into the election? Lots of our viewers and listeners very disappointed. He's not got a frontline role.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Look, if you get offered a job in America with lots of money and you can see the way this election is going, why would you? He'll probably come back in 2029.
Most definitely. OK, well, lots to get through. A really busy hour. We are consumed with election fever. But first, though, the news headlines and Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning to you. It's 11:minutes. I'm Aaron Armstrong. Sir Keir Starmer says only Labour can stop the chaos and turn the page as he outlines plans to cut bills and boost energy security. The Labour leader is campaigning in Scotland today, where he's pledged to bring down costs with a new publicly owned green power company. Labour, which has just 2 MPs in Scotland, is hoping to make electoral gains there after years of dominance by the SNP. Sir Keir says now's the time for change.
And whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living for grindless month after month after month, whether you're a business that's been struggling against the odds for a very, very long time now, or serving your communities, this is for you, because this is an election about change. And Scotland's voice is vital.
Well, energy policy and the cost of living look set to become electoral dividing lines as household bills fall to their lowest level in 2 years. Rishi Sunak's heading to Northern Ireland this morning. The Conservatives are expected to say they've brought economic stability back and they will criticise the cost of Labour's net zero pledges. Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho says Labour's plans will lead to families feeling worse off.
My priority is cheap energy for the country. I know that that's how the country will succeed or fail, whether you're businesses or household. It's really important that we get people cheap energy. And actually, if you look at Ed Miliband's plans, even places like the Tony Blair Institute have said that his plans, which have decarbonisation targets that no other major country have, are going to raise people's bills and hike people's taxes. And we've looked at these numbers, and I should tell you that that's something like £2,000 worth of extra taxes on households because of their overall plans over the course of the next Parliament.
Sir Ed Davey says the Liberal Democrats would slash energy bills by investing in home insulation and boosting renewables. MP Helen Morgan says her party's ideas are influencing government policy.
Well, I think we've always been able to influence the agenda, even though we're not a particularly big party. So if you look, for example, at the windfall tax, we started calling for one of those in October 21 to help people out with their energy bills. That later became Labour policy, and then that became government policy. So it's really, really important to set the agenda, and we have proved that we can be effective.
Jeremy Corbyn's confirmed he'll stand as an independent candidate in the general election against the party he once led. As a result, he's automatically been expelled as a member of Labour, which suspended him in 2020 over claims that complaints of anti-Semitism in the party had been, in his words, dramatically overstated for political reasons. The former Labour leader says he'll run as a voice for equality, democracy and peace in Islington North, which he's represented since 1983.
In democracy, I want our political parties to be democratic, but members of Islington North Labour have been denied the right to choose their own candidate, and alongside that, the community as a whole has been disempowered because of that. So, we have to stand up. We have to stand up and say, we're not taking this anymore, we will assert our rights.
Former Post Office boss Paula Venables has admitted she made mistakes in her handling of the Horizon scandal and says there's no one else to blame. She's giving evidence this morning, again, as hundreds of sub-postmasters are set to have their names cleared. Ms Venables said moments ago she did her very best, but accepted it wasn't good enough. She also said that she had to rely on colleagues who were experts, and she had no reason not to take that advice. Child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost an appeal to challenge her convictions. Letby's lawyers asked judges for the right to appeal at a 2.5-day hearing last month. The former nurse was sentenced to 14 whole life orders for murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 others at a hospital in Chester between 2015 and 2016. And more than 2/3 of beer and wine served in British pubs and bars are being short-measured. You're not getting enough. A new survey from the Trading Standards found 77 pubs and bars were serving around 70% less than the prescribed quantity required. And for the average beer drinker, it equates to a loss of something like £1.70 every week, or just over £88 a year. And it's even more for the average wine drinker, £2.20 short every week. The survey comes as the cost of a pint and other drinks hits an all-time high. And for the latest on all of our stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts. The QR code's on the screen. The details are on our website. Now it is back to Mark and Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. It's fast approaching 8 minutes after 11 o'clock. Good morning. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Acquare, and Mark Dolan.
Now, does the path to number 10 Downing Street pass through Scotland? Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer appears to think so.
While campaigning in Glasgow, he said there is no Labour without Scotland.
Let's take a listen.
And whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living for grindless month after month after month, whether you're a business that's been struggling against the odds for a very, very long time now, or serving your communities, this is for you, because this is an election about change. And Scotland's voice is vital, absolutely vital. It needs to be a leading voice. Send a message. Send a message. That is the height of the SNP ambition, to send a message, a protest in Westminster. I don't want Scotland to send a message. I want Scotland to send a government, a Labour government.
That was Keir Starmer.
Indeed. There you go. Listen, he's going for the no tie, but the jacket on, halfway house. I think he spoke quite well in Scotland, I've got to say.
Do you think?
Yeah, I think it was a confident performance, but it's going to be a long 6 weeks. And why has he only agreed to 2 television debates and not more, including GB News?
But listen, meanwhile, in the
let's
GB News exclusive, Boris Johnson ally and Brexiteer Lord David Frost has been banned from standing as a Tory candidate in the general election. Well, joining us now is GB News political correspondent Olivia Hartley. Olivia, can you give us an update on the situation? What's happening?
Well, Keir Starmer has just made this speech in Glasgow, and he obviously very much believes that the way to power in number 10 to a large majority, which is clearly what he wants, is through Scotland. And I think he stands a pretty good chance of doing pretty well there, mainly because the SNP party in the last few years has almost imploded. Humza Yousaf obviously had to resign in an embarrassing Liz Truss lettuce-like situation just 2 weeks ago, and John Swinney is the new head of the SNP. He made a brave start to the SNP's campaign yesterday, but he is obviously a little bit wet behind the ears, having only been in the job 2 weeks. We heard this rousing speech from Keir Starmer. Anas Sanwar, the leader of the Scottish Labour Party, was standing right next to him. But I think what will be really interesting over the course of this campaign is to see how that relationship between Anas Sanwar and Keir Starmer develops, because actually on pretty major policy issues, the two men really disagree. We know that Keir Starmer has been a staunch supporter of Israel, has stopped short of ever saying that there should be an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, even now when so many people in the Labour Party are calling for it. Meanwhile, Scottish Labour have been saying from pretty early on that they think there should be an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Now, that is a tricky circle to square, square to circle, between the leader of the Labour Party in the whole of the UK and the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland. And in an election where Scotland matters so much, the Labour Party is hoping to take sort of, 70, 80, 90% of seats from SNP MPs. That could be a bit of an issue.
Most definitely. I mean, it seems that Labour's strategy in England is to not be the Tories, and in Scotland it's to not be the SNP. How far can Labour go with such an approach?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question because Keir Starmer did an interview this morning on the radio where he was grilled on more sort of specific policy elements. He was asked whether he was wanted to scrap the two-child benefit limit, something that he said previously he would like to see done, whether he wanted to scrap student tuition fees, something he also said a few years ago he would like to see done. And on both issues, he sort of equivocated. He can't say that he's going to do these things because now he knows that they are very expensive indeed. So there isn't really much meat on the bones of his campaign for change. He wants change away from the Conservative Party, change away from the SNP. At the moment, it feels like that is enough. He's 20 points ahead in the polls. People are desperate for change. People are fed up, it seems, with the Conservative Party after 14 years in government. But as we get further into this campaign and the spotlight is more and more on Keir Starmer and precisely what he's going to do as Prime Minister when he gets into number 10, it could be that tactic of simply being not the Conservatives or not the SNP ceases to be enough for him.
Olivia, only a couple of seconds, but can I just ask you about Lord David Frost, one of the most popular Conservatives in the country, the man that arguably helped get Brexit across the line as our chief Brexit negotiator under the premiership of Boris Johnson. Why isn't he being selected as a prospective parliamentary candidate for the Conservatives this election?
Well, he was on the list for general Conservative MPs, but he's been told that he can't stand for a specific seat in this election. Now, why is that? Well, quite simply, it's because over the last few months, he has been publicly saying time and again that he thinks the Conservatives are doomed under Rishi Sunak. So I'm not sure it's that surprising that Prime Minister Rishi Sunak doesn't particularly want him standing for a specific seat. But as you say, Mark, to lots of people, he's a Brexit hero, and lots of people will believe that the Conservatives should be a broader church. Rishi Sunak should be willing to take criticism like this and will say that he should have been allowed to stand.
Most definitely. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. I think it's madness that Lord Frost doesn't have a chance at entering the House of Commons at the next election. Because let's be honest, Nana Akua, if it all fell apart for the Tories at the election, Lord Frost would be in the running to lead the party.
Potentially.
Thank you, Olivia Utley. We'll catch up soon.
If you just tuned in, just coming up to 14 minutes after 11 o'clock. This is Britain's Newsroom. Now, at least 4 people have died and 30 injured after the upper floor of a bar and restaurant collapsed in a tourist hotspot in Mallorca.
The Foreign Office have confirmed there were no British nationals involved in the incident, but joining us to tell us more is our reporter Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's the latest?
Well, we understand that there are 7 people seriously injured, currently being cared for by the emergency services in Mallorca. Every single available ambulance was rushed to the scene last night at 8:40 when that collapse happened. And we understand from local reports that it was a terrace above the restaurant area that collapsed in the 2-storey building, breaking through a vault and actually into the basement. So severe was the collapse. Now, what is especially concerning is that this restaurant, the Medusa Beach Club, posted on its Instagram page last night, which we checked, that this new terrace had just opened on Wednesday. This was its first full day in operation. So it does suggest a construction concern, a safety error there, which could have led to that collapse. We know last night that the fire brigade were involved, over 100 people from the emergency services trying to recover people from the rubble, the concrete and masonry and steel and glass that was involved in this collapse. And they also sent psychologists to the scene for those who were removed from the rubble, many of them, of course, traumatised by what they'd experienced, to have that immediate care. And one of the things that the emergency services demanded on this very busy tourist beachfront was silence, so they could hear any signs of life in the rubble. And from some really concerning reports, we do understand that some of the bars on the strip, on the beachfront, continue to play music and serve drinks, even though they were still going through that severe rescue operation.
It's just terrible. Do we know whether it was people were actually on the terrace, or was it a terrace that landed on people who were below? So was it full of people, this terrace?
Appallingly both, it seems. People on the terrace and those below. Of the 4 dead, no official confirmation, but local media reports from the island suggest that one of them was a doorman from the beach club, another was a worker there. The 2 others they haven't indicated, but likely tourists. This beach club, popular to both German and British tourists, but reports from the island do say that it was a mostly German crowd last night. They do make up the bulk of the tourists in the island every year. 17 million in Mallorca and the surrounding islands last year.
Has the search for human life ended now?
It's still an ongoing operation, so extensive was the rubble, and we do expect that we'll get further updates later today from the authorities on the island on those injured.
That's awful, isn't it? Really horribly going on a holiday and that awful type of thing happens. Well, Charlie, look, keep us updated. If anything new comes to light, let us know. That's Charlie Peters.
A devastating story, an absolute tragedy. Well, still to come, we're going to discuss what Nigel Farage's master plan could be after not standing as an MP in July. You're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Akua and Dolan.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Emma, let's start, shall we, with Prince William confirming on the Isles of Scilly yesterday that Kate is doing well. I thought it was a very brave lady to say, "Are we allowed to ask how the Princess of Wales is?" And I thought, well, we're not, so good for you.
Yeah. One of the hospitals he visited on the Isles of Scilly, an administrator, a hospital administrator, asked him how Kate was doing, and he said, "She's doing well, thanks."
Until we hear official word from the palace, then we're just going to have to rely on little snippets like this.
It does seem to be serious. So
it does.
Again, we wish her
What's
very
quite telling as well, I went through some of the social media comments on this, and people that live on the Isle of Scilly were just saying how close they got, how wonderful it was. He's supporting local businesses, and that pasty shop will now be like treasured, forever. That people forever go
on the
there.
quay. It sounds great. It's called on the quay.
Compare and contrast with this "I feel at home in Nigeria" vibe that Meghan's putting out. Two very, very different takes on how to be a royal.
Do they want to be royals or do they not? Because they seem to want sort of half the trappings but without all the kind of responsibilities.
These two brothers, who obviously went through a lot growing up, obviously can't stand the sight of each other right now, and it's just really sad.
Well, it goes beyond the brothers. I mean, we are told from some of the papers this morning that the King didn't have time in his schedule to see his son because he was actually meeting David Beckham for a private meeting.
Well, who would you choose?
All about priorities.
I mean, I know I
It's all about priorities.
But, you surely, you could just pop in as well. I reckon that Harry and Bex are pals, probably. So what's gone on there, and will they ever be able to repair things?
And they really were so close. I mean, when you compare the Buckingham Palace garden party, a couple of miles down the road, literally Harry was at Westminster or wherever it was. It wasn't far.
They were like
absolutely would have been possible for him
3 miles apart, and yet absolutely worlds apart in terms of their emotional state. If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You're watching Britain's Newsroom with Nana Akua and Mark Dolan. Lovely to have your company. And let's have a look at what we've got coming up. Let me tell you that whilst Keir Starmer is busy campaigning in Scotland, Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister for now, has kicked off the Tories campaign in Northern Ireland. He's been speaking to reporters. Let's take a listen.
On the fall in energy prices today. Well, very welcome fall in energy prices again, which are now about £500 lower than they were a year ago. And it shows that our plan is working. The economy has turned a corner. Inflation is now back to normal. Wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year. And at the beginning of this year, the economy grew at a very healthy rate. And that's why now is the right time to think about our future. And what I'll be talking to the British people about over the next few weeks is our bold action that we're prepared to take, working to a clear plan that we can see as having real effects effects on people for the better, and that's why we can deliver a secure future for everyone in our country.
We're now here in Northern Ireland, the fourth nation you've been to in 36 hours. You're travelling 100 miles in a private jet, meeting groups of employees. Is it going to work? Can you overturn Labour's large poll lead? Who are you kidding?
Well, after a difficult few years, we can now see that the plans that we put in place are working. Inflation has fallen back to normal levels. The economy grew faster than all our competitors at the beginning of this year. Today, we've had the news that energy bills are falling again, and wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year now. And that's why it's the right time to turn to the future. And the world is sadly a more uncertain place than it's been in decades. And that's why what the country needs is leadership that can provide bold action and that has a clear plan, because that's how we will deliver a secure future for everyone in our country.
Over in Parliament, your colleagues are leaving. So much of what you wanted to achieve is going up in smoke. Literally, the smoking ban is being junked today. Others, the rental reform bill, the sentencing bill, the criminal justice bill, this is your legacy. Is that embarrassing? I mean, the smoking ban was for the next generation, and you're dropping it.
Well, there's always a normal process at the end of a parliament to see which legislation you can pass in the time that's available. I'm pleased that yesterday we got the Horizon Bill through to make sure that we can deliver compensation and justice to the postmasters that were so badly impacted by what I described as one of the worst miscarriages of justice that we've ever known. Today we'll be debating the bills that will ensure that the Compensation Authority for those impacted by the infected blood scandal get the justice that they deserve. So we are making progress. And the smoking ban, of course, disappointed to not be able to get that through at the end of this session, given the time available. But what I'd say is that's evidence of the bold action that I'm prepared to take. That's the type of Prime Minister I am. That's the type of leadership that I bring. I stepped up to do something that is bold, that will make an enormous difference to the future of our country. That's what the situation right now demands. Someone who is willing to take bold action, that has a clear plan, because that's how we deliver a secure future for everyone and their families.
On TV debates in the election campaign, how many do you want with Sir Keir Starmer, and why won't he do more with you?
Well, I heard this morning that he said he wanted to debate the British people rather than me. I think what the British people want are answers to the questions about what he would actually do if he became Prime Minister and how much it's going to cost them in higher taxes. I think those are the answers that he should be providing. You know, for my part, I'm very happy to debate Keir Starmer so I can set out what I want to do for this country, taking bold action, working towards a clear plan and delivering a secure future for everyone. That's the choice of this election. It's either going to be Keir Starmer or me that's Prime Minister on July the 5th, and he should want to debate me. I want to debate him, and I hope that he takes up the offer.
That's Rishi Sunak speaking earlier. Let's get the thoughts of the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, also former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. I'm going to come to you, Dawn. So he's I thought it was quite funny what was said there, that he's sort of like on a boat to nowhere really on this.
But do you think, by the way, he had a proper waterproof jacket on this time?
Very sensible.
He's learned his lesson.
With a little hood on the back.
There was an umbrella nearby, I'm sure.
Maybe he had a hood as well. But Dawn, what do you make of what he's saying there? He's talking about as though he thinks that he's in with a chance.
Well, I mean, they've had two pieces of good news. I mean, the inflation figures and the energy bills, neither of which I think he had much to do with, to be honest with you. But let's be honest with you, the Rwanda thing is certainly not going to happen before the election now in July, is it? If it even happens at all. And we have to remember that Sunak, when he was Chancellor, thought it was a waste of time in the first place, but he's changed his mind now. But I do think the whole immigration thing, is there a way that Sunak can come back, can have any chance of getting even close to Labour, bearing in mind they're, 25 points behind at the moment? And it's that 2019 Red Wall voters who suddenly jumped ship to the Tories under Boris Johnson over the whole immigration Brexit thing. Now, 1 in 4 of those voters have just politically lost the will to live. Some have gone to Reform, some have actually gone to Labour. But 1 in 4 of them are still going, I don't know.
It's up for grabs.
So, in theory, it's up for grabs. And Bill and I were talking about this, as well as discussing that we now hate one another because of our football teams. Nothing to do with politics.
You're a hammer, what's he? What are you, Bill?
I can't mention it.
Oh, God bless you.
Oh, yeah, don't you start.
What excellent taste
Don't
Bill's
you start.
got. Come on, you start.
Don't you start. But it's like, is there a feeling out there, and this is Bill's idea, I'm sorry, I'm nicking it, that maybe people will be thinking, yeah, OK, anyone but the Tories, we've got to get them out, they've been in power for too long. But we're a bit wary about a Labour landslide. So maybe as push comes to shove, they'll be thinking, ooh, not quite sure about this.
Yeah, so I think it is one of those generational changes. I'm reminded of Jim Callaghan in the run-up to 1979 saying there are times when the mood changes and there's nothing you can do. And I think that's where Sunak is. However, the one risk for us is a bit like Theresa May in 2017, where I knew lifelong Tory voters who said, I want the Tories to win, but I don't want May with a landslide. That's the one risk to the Labour Party this time. Now, I think we can handle that, but we need to make clear that if people really want change, they've actually got to vote for it.
Do you think it was wise to then call the election now? Because obviously Labour will be left to deal with the small boats crisis. Was this a wise move?
I think he chose to go now. One, because I genuinely think he's fed up. I don't think he's enjoying the leadership. But two, he thought things were going to get worse. So by the autumn, it will have been proven that Rwanda is not a deterrent. We're going to have 2 or 3 months of even more rising waiting lists in the National Health Service. No tax cuts around. So this was probably the window of opportunity that he had. But he didn't take his party with him.
But it might have worked, but we don't know. And he has left Labour now to deal with the mopping up of the small boats crisis over the summer months.
But there's so much of that. I mean, this is going to be the worst inheritance of any incoming Labour government that we've had. But we're up for it.
OK, well, listen, Dawn, we have our first conflict point of the election campaign, and that is Rishi Sunak's request for 6 TV debates, which I don't think is unreasonable. That's 1 a week in this very short election campaign. And Starmer will only grant 2. The Tories will make hay with this, won't they?
Well, and they are already, aren't they? They're calling, Starmer a coward, is ducking these weekly TV debates. He's, the knight afraid to fight quip that's already doing the rounds, isn't it? However, 6 weeks to go. These 2... every week.
Oh, it'd be so boring.
I mean, yeah, Nana, you hit the nail on the head. I mean,
I think we would smash them in the ratings, wouldn't we, Nana?
Well, I just find that because we've all stopped listening. What we actually want to hear is what are they going to do?
Exactly.
I don't want this performative business.
No, and that's what it's going to be, Nana.
Scrutiny, and why
it's not
does
really,
Starmer only want to have 2 TV debates, and why hasn't he appeared on a leaders' debate on GBNews, which the Prime Minister was happy to do, and as of yet, still waiting for a reply from Mr Starmer.
No, I think that it was cowardice. He should have come on and he should have done that. I mean, I do not understand. I said, what I'm confused about, as a journalist, is who's advising these people? Who told Rishi Sunak to go and stand there in the rain? I mean, that was just terrible. And now it's like, who's advising Keir Starmer not to go? I mean, that was a classic. Starmer should have gone on GBNews and had that debate then. I don't want to do it every week, by the way. Please, no, not every week. I couldn't stand it. But he is ducking the debates, and I want to know why.
Well, Bill doesn't seem to think he is.
It's not. I mean, frankly, it's hypocrisy of the Tory party to go on about this. David Cameron, when he was Prime Minister, ducked the debates. The last general election, Boris Johnson refused to do the Andrew Neil show because he knew it was the most intense scrutiny that he was going to get. Keir has said he'll do 2 or 3 debates, which is the standard norm. But I agree absolutely with Dawn. 6 leaders' debates over the next 6 weeks.
1 a week.
I just want to get this in.
I'll host it, and I'll do it for nothing.
I'll do it. But listen, I'll do it.
You and me together? I'll let you lead it.
I think I can handle it. What about Sir John Redwood? There are loads of these Tory MPs are now jumping off this sinking ship. Or some people would say that they have a chance, who knows, but a lot of them are now standing down. It's quite a few, John Redwood.
Absolutely, and there's a mate of mine who's a Labour Party member, lives in Redwood's constituency, considering voting tactically for the Lib Dems. So I think a lot of people are jumping ship. My former constituency, Harlow, where Robert Halfon, my successor, stood down 6 weeks ago because Sunak took everyone by surprise, including his party, by committing to July the 4th. The Tories in Harlow haven't even got a candidate today. Our candidate, Chris Vince, has been in place for over a year. I mean, the lack of preparation and planning on Sunak's behalf, I think, really begs questions.
Well, I think it was a brilliantly executed surprise. Now, here's a quick one, Dawn. The clock's against us. What is Nigel Farage's master plan?
I don't know is the honest answer to that. I'm going to be completely honest here, I'm slightly disappointed that he is putting the USA and Donald Trump over this country.
Do you think... But no, do you think he's doing that, though? Would you not suggest that maybe he realises the predicament of reform and has thought, well, I'll give it another 4 years to sort of get itself together when I know I can actually win?
I think he bottled it. However, I still think Reform are going to have a significant impact. They're going to take 10% plus votes in each constituency. My seat of Harlow, the last time I held it, 2005, I won by just 97 votes. And there were two Brexity parties then. There was UKIP and the Robert Kilroy-Silk party. They took 5,000 votes between them. Predominantly former Tory voters. And I think it's already going to be a big Labour win. I think the impact of Reform will make it even bigger.
All right, thank you very much, Bill Rummel and Dawn Neeson. Thank you so much. Right, next up, let's get your latest headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 11:31. Good morning. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Prime Minister says the lowering of the price cap shows his plan is working as both parties look to make energy policy an electoral dividing line. Speaking in Belfast a little earlier as part of a whistle-stop campaign tour of the UK, Rishi Sunak has once again repeated that the economy has turned a corner and says he'll be talking to voters over the next few weeks about securing Britain's future.
Inflation has fallen back to normal levels. The economy grew faster than all our competitors at the beginning of this year. Today, we've had the news that energy bills are falling again, and wages have been rising faster than prices for almost a year now. And that's why it's the right time to turn to the future. And the world is sadly a more uncertain place than it's been in decades. And that's why what the country needs is leadership that can provide bold action and that has a clear plan, because that's how we will deliver a secure future for everyone in our country.
Well, meanwhile, the Labour leader is campaigning in Scotland, where he's pledged to bring down energy costs with a new publicly owned green power company. Sir Keir Starmer says now is the time for change.
And whether you're a family that's been struggling with the cost of living for grindless month after month after month, whether you're a business that's been struggling against the odds for a very, very long time now, or serving your communities, this is for you, because this is an election about change. And Scotland's voice is vital.
The Post Office has admitted she made mistakes in her handling of the Horizon scandal and says there's no one else to blame. Giving evidence at the Post Office inquiry in London, Paula Venables said she had to rely on colleagues who were experts and she had no reason not to take their advice, but she denied accusations that she led the Post Office through deception. We have plenty more on all of our stories at the top of the next hour with the full news bulletins, or you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's how the markets look. The pound buys you $1.2713, €1.1736. The price of gold, £1,839 and 32 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is trading at 8,308 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Let me tell you, I'm back at 8 o'clock tonight for Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, a very lively hour. But next up at noon,
hey,
good
wait
afternoon,
wait
Britain.
a minute. You don't promote your own stuff and then not me.
Of course you
And
do.
I'm here on Saturday, 3 o'clock.
Let's do it.
But let's do what's coming up at noon. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily.
Well, I'm very excited for both of those shows coming up tonight and tomorrow. We've got a lot coming up. Of course, election gossip, lots of it about. We're going to be digging into a bit about Nigel Farage, what he's saying, what other members of the Reform Party are saying.
Could it be
Where
that
does the
there's
truth
a
lie?
bit of infighting
Do you
in
think?
Reform right now? What Ben
Why would you say
Habib
that?
has said in the last 24 hours is questioning what Nigel said last night. Now, Nigel was saying last night that he was preparing to make a big announcement about standing to be an MP next week. CCHQ, the Conservative campaign headquarters, got wind of that, and that's partly why the election was called. Ben Habib was rubbishing that theory this morning, so it does seem that the message discipline within Reform perhaps isn't all there. And what you really need in a general election campaign is message discipline, is everything everyone singing from the same hymn sheet.
But Nigel, he's probably obviously been given a great offer in America. And again, he's one of the most consequential politicians of our time, so he could make himself bigger there and then come back and have an even greater impact.
He could, and there's also stats out today showing that reform could take quite a lot of the vote in key areas, which will not be music to the ears of the Tories. But also, with all the election gossip, is, of course, Jeremy Corbyn, the former Labour leader, expelled from the party. Could he win as an independent in Islington North? He's been there for 40 years. Could he win without a red rosette? That's the question.
But isn't it extraordinary? It took until today, this morning, for Jeremy Corbyn to be expelled as a Labour MP. Keir Starmer could have had him expelled as a Labour MP at any point since he stopped sitting as a Labour MP, because he was still a member of the party. But now he's not a member of the party from today. It's all a bit convenient.
Well, it's very interesting as well, because I was listening on the radio earlier this morning when Keir was asked about are you going to bring back Diane Abbott because you've accepted Natalie Elphicke? So surely, and so Keir said that we would know, and he said about June the 4th or 5th or something. Early June, basically. He gave a date in early June. So I think we should hold his feet to the fire and hear what he has to say about that.
Yes, that would be very interesting indeed. And I don't know if you saw what happened in East Finchley yesterday in North London. A lot of Jewish people live in that area of North London, and a cinema vandalised with red paint graffiti because they dared to screen a film about the Hamas October the 7th attacks. And lots of pro-Israel, lots of Jews and also supporters of Israel came out and they fought back. So we'll be speaking to someone who was at that event.
Brilliant. All right, Tom and Emily will be up at noon.
Yes, indeed. Lots more to come before midday. We are consumed with election fever. We'll see you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Have government done enough, do you think, to actually help them out?
I think there will be occasions where people have tried to run a venture, whether it be a pub, a restaurant or anything sort of like that, in the hospitality sector, and it hasn't become commercially viable because of costs, because of bad accounting or because of bad business people. That is just a fact of life. That happens in every sector. So there will be pubs that are closing because they've been poorly run. But I do think there will be occasions where people are forced out of the market. So if local councils aren't being able to pass on business rates, for example, maybe central government can do more. It always tries to do more to cut beer duty and things like that to keep pubs going. So I don't think it's necessarily just as plain as what James is saying, is that, you know, bad pubs will just inevitably be falling by the wayside.
The idea that you two gentlemen, you raging capitalists, support the government stepping in to protect pubs seems to be particularly peculiar. If a pub isn't commercially viable, it has to be allowed to fail.
Well, Sadiq Khan, you know, he has a nighttime czar that he pays well over 100 grand.
Yes.
And businesses are going under like you wouldn't believe in London.
She's a real nightmare.
What's your point?
Well, the point is that Labour aren't exactly helping out these businesses, are they? So
I'm saying that pubs should not be protected by the state. I'm all for a pub.
Well, I'm not suggesting that we subsidise pubs.
That has been suggested. That's what James May is railing against. Although I have to say, it's all very well for James May and presumably his very posh gastropub. But if a pub is not fit for purpose, and May makes this point, you know, you've got to have decent, clean loos and a clean pub. And also, realistically, in this day and age, you know, times change. You've got to put on some decent grub as well if you want it to survive. We can't have the government stepping in to save our pubs. And anyway, my understanding over the last 10, 20 years, as a percentage, we haven't lost that many pubs, so they're not going under anytime soon.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family. We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's just coming up to 11:41. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Nana Acquia and Mark Doland.
As we approach the 80th anniversary of D-Day, a commemorative torch is being lit in Harrogate, where 900 airmen and one woman from across the Commonwealth are buried.
I like that, and one woman, absolutely.
There's always one.
They could have said air persons, though, to get out of it.
That's exactly. Gender neutral, maybe?
Exactly. Well, the ceremony is part of the Commonwealth War Grave Commission's Lighting Their Legacy campaign, which aims to build connections between veterans and young people. Our reporter Anna Riley joins us now. Anna, give us a bit more detail on this. Tell us more.
Good morning. Yes, as you say, that Lighting Their Legacy event has been organised by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and it's all about passing a torch across the UK in different locations, all ahead of D-Day, where the veterans who will be going to Normandy will be taking that torch with them on the ferry to mark D-Day 80. The event is all about passing on the legacy of D-Day from veterans to younger people, and that's what's happened here today. A veteran from York who was there for D-Day, Ken Cook, has told his story to primary school children here for them to remember that legacy, and they have written tributes to be taken over to Normandy for those D-Day 80 events. I spoke to Elizabeth Cook earlier. She's from the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, and this is what she said about the event.
So the Lighting Their Legacy event is all about getting the torch of commemoration passed on to the younger generation. We're approaching a time now, 80 years on from D-Day, when those with actual living memory of what happened, are decreasing, and we want to make sure that into the future all of those men and women who've served during the Second World War are remembered.
And that light has now been lit here at Stonefall That light has now been lit here at Stonefall Cemetery in Harrogate. The school children are still here. They had the opportunity to ask the veteran Ken Cook questions, which was very illuminating. And one child in particular, as children do, asked what the food was like while he was serving in the army.
Anna Riley, thank you very much.
Brilliant stuff. So important to commemorate those D-Day moments in history, which, of course, we will be covering in great depth in just a short while. Lots of emails coming in. How about this on Reform UK? This from David, who says, Nana and Mark, Reform are going to damage Labour as well as the Tories.
I agree, and I think it's a lot of people are making the assumption that it's only going to be the Conservative vote that will be affected. I don't think that's true. I think that a lot of people from both who would normally loyal to both parties are more than ready to go and try a different party. This was interesting. Scotty says this: can you all discuss the reason why Rachel Reeves and Starmer do not want us to know they intend raiding the private sector's second pensions by 55% tax? Sorry, that's just disappeared suddenly. Oh, yes. And IHT inheritance tax. They do not want this discussed to avoid losing votes. Starmer and his double pension, he agreed to, will not pay tax. Why should the public sector get away with this? Well, it'll be interesting. I'd love them all to be answering more questions. In particular, I am very interested on his raid on the private school sector and how he intends that to pay for all the extra teachers, 6,500, he's saying. I think that's over their term. But what if it ends up closing down lots of other schools? Some of it doesn't really make sense.
Well, indeed. Certainly, some kids will leave the private sector. Right. And where are they going to be educated? In the state sector.
Exactly.
You know, the private sector saves the taxpayer £4.5 billion a year by educating the kids outside of and out with the state. How about this from PJ Nobby on Nigel Farage. Nigel was tricking the Conservative Party by saying he would stand And as a former political organiser, I would have done the same. Feed false information like in wartime. And this from Sue. Regarding the election launch, if Rishi Sunak had moved inside when he announced the general election, he would have been called a wimp.
I was about to read that one.
Well, there you go. It's a good one, isn't it? Because the point is, Nana, that actually him getting rained on, him getting drowned out by a Labour-supporting protester, I think helps Rishi Sunak.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I'll tell you what it cast him as.
It came across as a cross between sort of Gonzo and Roland Rat, and that's not to be offensive in the sense, but it's just to kind of say that he just looked like he just did not work.
Well, I think it was humble, OK?
Do you
he
think?
stood in the rain, he carried on with his speech. He was absolute noise bellowing out of that loudspeaker from an anti-Brexit, anti-Tory protester. And actually, if I was Rishi Sunak, I would have interrupted the speech and said, listen to that blaring music. Don't let these bullies win.
Well, what about, I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, I don't think his speech fared much better, actually, because he did such a short speech. You could see he was totally unprepared and wasn't ready. And then you had Ed Davey with his things.
But it was solid. Wasn't Starmer's speech solid?
Do you think?
And wasn't that the point?
I don't think it came across that way at all.
Okay.
I think none of them, in my view, have
Do you know who Sunak's going to be? He's going to be the next John Major. And you will remember in that election, it was 92, that John Major went around with his soapbox. He got heckled, he got eggs thrown at him. He allowed himself to be scrutinised, yelled at, attacked, and he won the election. Sunak could do the same.
Well, that was the same with Boris Johnson. They got rid of him, didn't they?
That's true.
So I don't know whether
Last
that
long.
works. Might not work this time around, I think.
Very possibly. Now, up next, police are being told to pause arrests. That's right, stop arresting people in order to free up space in prisons in England and Wales.
Wow.
Sounds like madness. We've got more on that. You're watching Britain's Newsroom or listening on the radio. GB News, Mark Dolan and Nana Akua. See you shortly.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will be a cloudy day for most of us through the rest of the day. However, some sunshine will break out across the south potentially later on today. In the north, though, drizzly rain for many areas. That's because we've still got this area of low pressure. This is the same area of low pressure that has brought very recent heavy rainfall to many northern areas. And so it will stay quite cloudy across the north and the west in particular, where drizzly rain will persist over the high ground and across coastal areas, and it will still feel fairly cool for the time of year up here. However, further south, particularly into the afternoon, there's a chance of some sunny breaks, highs of around 20 degrees across the south and east and into the high teens for many southern areas. So fairly pleasant in the sunshine, but for most of us, still a bit of a disappointing feeling day for this point in May. So by the end of the afternoon, we'll see quite a lot of clouds still across much of Scotland and some drizzly rain as well. As I said, it's most likely over the higher ground into Northern Ireland as well, parts of Cumbria, the southwest of Scotland too. Temperatures around 13 or 14 degrees to end the day. Further south, though, will start to turn a bit drier. That dry weather pushing further north into much of Wales and the Midlands as well. And it will turn drier and clearer as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes further north, taking that clearer weather further north with it as well. So a fairly clear night. We could see some mist and fog developing for many southern areas where the ground is wet from the recent rainfall. But across the far north, some drizzly rain will continue across northern Scotland. But it's going to be a much cooler start to the day on Saturday. However, it will be a much brighter day as well, so it should warm up quite quickly. As I said, some early mist and fog to start the day, but plenty of sunshine across the UK. Saturday's looking like the best day of the bank holiday weekend. The afternoons will be a little bit cloudier, and there's a chance of a few showers across parts of England and Wales and potentially the southeast later on in the day. But in the sunshine, there'll be highs of 22 degrees. Bye-bye.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria De Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, this one's a shocker. Police have been told to make fewer arrests to save space in overcrowded prisons, but they are refusing.
Absolutely. Now, listen, a major row broke out among Britain's most senior officers at Scotland Yard as they announced that it would never agree to pausing any necessary arrests. Well, joining us now is the former Detective Superintendent at Scotland Yard, Shabnam Chowdhury. Shabnam, this is absolutely shocking. Someone's done something that is wrong or against the law, you've broken the law, you should be arrested, and if it requires you to be held somewhere, that should be available. What on earth is happening?
I tell you, when I actually read this, I actually had to laugh because I thought, this has got to be some kind of a joke. It's absolutely ridiculous and absolutely shameful of the government to even make such a suggestion. I'm actually disappointed that the National Police Chief Council also put it out to police forces to say, you know, pausing on non-priority crimes and also to suspend operations that may result in large number of arrests. Absolutely ridiculous. Trust and confidence of policing across England and Wales is already at its lowest. The public don't trust the police. Criminals will think that they've got a free get-out-of-jail card to go out and commit more crimes if they want to. Crime is on the increase, 37% increase in shoplifting, 9% in robbery, 7% in knife crime, and then you've got the other low-level crimes that they're talking about, which is antisocial behaviour. Shoplifting comes into that, vehicle crime. So what they're saying actually is you're not arresting those already. You're going to have to go one step further and consider not arresting the more serious criminals.
How do we go about creating more space in our prisons, though, Shabnam? Because these criminals do have to go somewhere.
Well, look, this isn't the problem of policing across the UK. This is a problem of the Ministry of Justice. They need to look at either building more prisons or ensuring that there is significant space. Not that we don't want prisoners in there. Didn't we recall recently that they said they were going to reduce prison sentences of some prisoners and release them early? Because there was a shortfall. And let's not forget, when Suella Braverman was the Home Secretary, she wanted a ridiculous amount of protesters arrested, which would have also resulted in custodial sentences. So, you know, the government on one hand want you to arrest more people, and then on the other hand, they're saying to you, don't arrest more people because there's not enough space in the prisons. This is an issue that is for the prison cells. When every police officer joins policing, I can tell you this with experience, the first thing they want to do is catch the bad guys. Bang them up, put them in prison so that people are free and safe and feel comfortable to be able to walk around in society without being victims of some form of, whether it's a petty crime or whether it's a serious crime.
Shabnam Chowdhury, thank you very much. That's a shocking story. What are they talking about? God, we're just letting people out. Look, what kind of a message does that send to the prisoners of this, you know, people who want to commit crime in this country?
Exactly. I mean, the police have effectively been defunded already. Let's hope it's a big election topic. Of course, we'll be staying on this. Nana's back tomorrow.
Yes,
at
I'm
3
back
o'clock.
at 3. You're back.
Tonight at 8 o'clock. Can I say, Nana, I've enjoyed every second.
Oh, thank you very much. Right. Well, listen, stay with us. I've enjoyed every second for you as well. This, of course, is... what are we? Good Afternoon, Britain?
In my opinion, I think it's the Nana Aquia show.
Up next, though, it is
with
Good
Mark
Afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Emily. Enjoy.
Amazing. Well, we've got a big show coming up. The second full day of the general election, so lots of general election coverage. Is there splits in reform? But it's not just all about the election.
No, it's not. Also, FA Cup final tomorrow. But are we being shortchanged at the pub? We'll dig into it.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us. There will be some sunshine later on across southern areas, but further rain is to come across the north after a very wet few days here. However, having said that, it is going to be drier than it has been lately, but some drizzly rain will continue. It's an area of frontal systems wrapped around this area of low pressure here in the North Sea. To the south, though, we're well away from that low pressure system, so we'll see some brightness. The best of the sunshine will likely be across parts of South Wales, the southeast as well, but there could be a few showers here and there. Temperatures just about climbing to 20 degrees in the south, but for most of us they'll be a little below par for the time of year, and it will feel fairly cool if you're exposed to an onshore breeze in the north as well. Those clearer skies will become a bit more widespread throughout this evening, so a fairly fine end to the working week for many southern counties this evening. Cloudier skies further north with some drizzly rain, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well. On the coast and over the high ground is where the rain is most likely, and we will see some stronger winds up towards the Northern Isles as well. It will turn drier as the night goes on, as that area of low pressure pushes away to the north, so clearer skies will become more widely seen throughout the night, covering much of England and Wales through the night and into southern Scotland by the morning. We could see some mist and fog developing as well across southern counties because the ground is fairly wet. That should clear up quite quickly through Saturday morning, but it will be a fresher start to the day. Temperatures in the mid-single figures for some of us. So a slightly fresher start to the day, but there will be more sunshine around certainly. And Saturday is looking like the most dry and warmest day of the bank holiday weekend. Most of us should see plenty of sunshine and dry weather as well. However, as the afternoon goes on, we could see some heavier showers encroaching into northeastern England, southeastern Scotland. But as I said, most of us should stay dry and in the best of the sunshine, highs of 22 degrees in the south and the high teens in the north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest cash prize we've given away to date. An incredible £20,000 that you could use however you like. And because it's totally tax-free, every single penny will be in your bank account to do whatever you like with. £20,000 in tax-free cash really could be yours this summer. Hurry, you've got to be in it to win it. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05, PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews.